Episode 11 of Crosscurrents is part of the ongoing recordings of the key talks from the Environmental Humanities in the Public Realm workshop held at the Nexus Center. In this episode, we focus on communicating the environmental humanities digitally. Today, scholars everywhere have powerful digital tools with which to communicate ideas and information, including open access publishing, web displays, podcasts, and social media. What do these technologies offer us? How can they be used more effectively? And what kind of communities of scholarship can we build online? We begin with Jessica Dewitt, a recent graduate of the University of Saskatchewan's PhD program in history and social media editor for the Network in Canadian History and the Environment, or NICHE. In the latter position, Jessica has been a passionate pioneer in using social media to disseminate scholarship and build online communities within the field of environmental history in Canada. In the second part of the episode, we hear from Kimberly Coulter, who has been developing digital communication platforms at the Rachel Carson Center for Environment and Society since 2009, especially as leader of the Environment and Society portal. Kim reflects on some of the pitfalls of digital outreach, but also speaks about how her team developed the portal as an incredibly successful digital outreach platform for the environmental humanities. Welcome to the 11th episode of Crosscurrents, a podcast of Memorial University's Nexus Center for Humanities and Social Science Research. My name is John Sandloss, and I'm the director of the Nexus Center and also the host of the podcast.
How do we create an ecological abundance if we think of ourselves as an ecosystem that we're trying to nurture and grow and keep healthy? And I started my last talk on Thursday with this as well. And I think it's a really important message and one that we really think we should be thinking about during this workshop. And I just put my own little thing over it. Give a shit about something. I don't do this work to shout into the void for fun. I do it to reach out and share stories. So ask ourselves, how can I use environmental humanities and social media to improve my ability to make others give a shit? And if you do not, this is from my friend Liz, if you do not follow her on social media, Chase_Prairie, she is an amazing example of how to do environmental humanities in the public. So what she does is she's a cartoonist, and she does cartoon drawings of her research and of conference talks. So she'll be reading a paper by an ecologist from the 1930s, and she'll draw the landscape and him in the landscape with bubbles of what she's learning from him and post it online. That is accessible. That is something that people want to engage with. She also, if she's at a conference, she would be sitting there sketching and make a perfect sketch of me with bubbles, all the ideas that are coming out. And then she posts that. So just an amazing example of how to use social media and how to use humanities to make people care. So at NICHE, I control our Facebook page, which is a struggle because of the algorithm, which we can talk about later, but is the place, if you want to reach the public and you can conquer the algorithm, that's where you're going to do it most likely. We're most successful on Twitter. That's our powerhouse. And then we recently abandoned Google Plus and are now taking over Instagram. Slowly but surely. We've been there for maybe 2 months now, and we're doing really well so far. It's a fun new project, learning how to use Instagram stories and whatnot to make things interesting for people. I also have my personal accounts, and I manage anywhere from 5 to 6 other academic Twitter accounts at a time. Basically, people are like, you are good at this, here you go. So basically, I control academic Twitter, particularly in the environmental humanities sector. For my personal account, I reach about an audience of 300,000 to 600,000 people per month with what I am putting out there. And I do that, the way that I am so successful is that I'm a person online, I am welcoming, I interact, and I am not just what I do for a living. I bring people in to the environmental humanities by being something other than an environmental historian. I am all of these things. Two aspects of my work at Niche. There's two broad umbrellas that we can think about. First of all is the technical and practical aspects, which I'll touch upon today. I did more so on Thursday when I did an hour-long talk on this sort of thing. But I did bring all of my slides and put them at the end of this from that day. So if anyone has a question about technicalities or brings up a question that's related to that, I do have other slides. What I will focus a bit more on today are the educational academic goals and social intentionality that is behind my work. So with the technical aspects, this is a small portion of my command center. Yeah. So from here, this is just one section of it. I have this up on my computer all day. Like over here, I'm keeping track of specific hashtags. In this column, I also keep track of the keyword environmental history. And when you do that, you find the people in the public who are talking about environmental history that have no idea that you exist, that are reading Bill Cronin because that's a popular environmental history book. And what you do is then you acknowledge them. How do you get the public to interact with us? We interact with them, and we do it first, and we take the initiative. We treat them as individuals, we acknowledge the value of what they are doing or their interests, and they will reciprocate. This feed, for instance, is a list of all environmental history and humanities accounts that I have found on the internet, on Twitter. So every single time I find someone new, I add them to this list. There's about over 1,500 accounts on this list now of people who are involved in environmental history and humanities. And that means that in real time, I see everything that these individuals are posting and can like, retweet, what have you. Always keeping track of Misha's new followers and following them back almost immediately. Again, when you when someone follows you back, the best thing that you can do is to reciprocate, and things will grow. So, I mean, probably not gonna follow Bon Voyage, this garbage, right, back. But this person, I think I did follow back. No, that's a porn site. No.
Oh no.
You get lots of like rando, like spam accounts like that like you throughout the day. I don't follow them back unless they're a real person and they have interests outside of that, of their sex work, which is cool. These are the hashtags that I keep track of every day and all day. These are just some of them. Most of them are environmental history focused because that is my core focus, but I'm keeping track of everything that's going on the internet in environmental history and humanities all day, every day, and I love it. I'm a person who loves stats. I'm a person who's kind of like a robot, so I'm just like bing, 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 and I can do it and be efficient about it, and that's me. And that's why I'm particularly predisposed to be good at this job. I'm also predisposed to be good at this job because I am an empathetic person and I care deeply about activism and social justice and whatnot. As I was talking about earlier, one of the key characteristics of being effective on social media as an academic, if you want to make an impact, is reciprocity. You get out of social media what you put into it. So if you tweet your article into the void and you never interact or acknowledge another person, you just got on every 2 months and put a journal article out there, no one's going to care. No one's going to acknowledge you because you aren't acknowledging them. There's no reason to interact with you because you're not seen as a figure that's deserves it, right? Always follow other people back, acknowledge other accounts, and make an effort to engage in conversation, like and retweet. And this may seem silly, but we are all fighting against the algorithms. And that's how you beat them, is by making them look popular. So I am very interested in feminist theory and social justice activism. So as I said in my paper, a lot of what I do is informed by that. When I first started at Niche, this is the main thing that really drove, it's very simple, but that drove how I was going to approach the position. And I think makes me different from a lot of other academic accounts. It's shine theory. It was developed by Anne Friedman and Amina Tuso. The basic premise is I don't shine if you don't shine. And the idea is that women, it has its basis in feminism, is that if women don't support other women, then no women are going to succeed. So rather than focusing on competition, we should be focusing on bringing everyone up with us, right? So that's how I approach my position at Niche. So my first and foremost goal is to advertise everything that we are doing on our website or workshops like this that we are sponsoring. My second goal is to advertise everything that Niche members are doing. And Niche members is a very broad, basically if you interact with Niche or have published or anything, you are a Niche member technically. And then thirdly, I look to interact and support all environmental history and all environmental humanities scholarship that is taking place online. And I make an attempt to cross hierarchical power structures. I make no difference between supporting the first year MA student to supporting the tenured professor who is about to retire, who has 20 books out. I make no difference in how I approach acknowledging them. And I think that makes a huge difference in building community and bringing people into the fold that would not otherwise feel comfortable. A lot of people don't like it. I've gotten pushback, mainly from senior academics who just don't get it. Too bad. The second thing that in the last year that has really informed how I look at what I am doing is Emergent Strategy. And this is developed by Adrienne Marie Brown. And it's an intentional activism and collective organizing tool. And what really, because I'm an environmental historian, what I love about it is that it's based on biomimicry and permaculture and thinking of yourself and the work that you're trying to do and the communities that you're trying to support ecologically. And thinking about how nature doesn't necessarily try to push things through, right? It lets things develop naturally and support things naturally. And that's a major part of it. So the principles of Emergent Strategy are firstly, small is good, small is all. Large is a reflection of the small. So this kind of goes back to what Brittany was talking about earlier in the discussion. And that we don't need to be thinking about the grand scheme of things. How do we reach the entire public? My experience at Niche is that we reach the public by taking care of ourselves and taking care of our community and by making us strong. And as we are stronger and stronger, the more people we are bringing in who are not environmental humanities scholars. I do interact with a lot of people in the public, online, in the position of Niche. Another thing is change is constant, be like water. So I'm constantly trying to change the ways that I'm interacting with the public, change the ways that I view things. And you can think about, you guys can think about this with your own work and stuff too, because I think it's useful when we're thinking about how we want to reach the public. There's always enough time for the right work. And to me, the public engagement on social media is part of the right work. And so many people say, I don't have time for it. Well, make time. If you want to make it a priority, if you want to make time, if you want to make reaching the public a priority, then I think that there is time for it, and there should be time for it. There is a conversation in the room that only these people can have. Find it. And I do that daily by trying to network people. When I'm thinking about it in an online sphere, is that the room is very large and that I can facilitate conversations starting. So because of my work I do, I know, like, if someone's like, oh, I need a scholar of the history of marijuana, and I'm like, I know 4 of them, oh, here we go. And I get those conversations starting with those scholars because I know what everyone is doing. And I know how everyone interacts and how everyone connects to each other. And when I see the opportunity to make those connections, I go out of my way to do so. Again, this is like a labor of love. Never a failure, always a lesson. So some things I've tried on social media have failed. Kimberly was talking earlier about some issues that she had with the format of the website at first, but it was a lesson, right? A lesson in what happens. Also, I also think of this as when I have dealt with harassment online, difficult harassment. I don't think of it necessarily negatively. I think of it as a lesson, and a lesson of how to go forward and how to handle these kind of individuals. Trust the people, and if you trust the people, they become trustworthy. And that's, I go forward and I trust everyone in the environmental history community, and I put trust into them, and I receive it back. I get what I give out back. Move at the speed of trust and focus on critical connections more than critical mass. Build the resilience by building the relationships. So again, every day I'm going on and I'm building these relationships between people that were not there beforehand. And then lastly, less prep, more presence. A lot of people are like, oh, I have to have this perfect social media presence, and I can't make any mistakes, and I can't present this part of myself, and I can't do this. And that just stops them from actually being a person online. Because ultimately, the public doesn't care what position you hold. They care about what you know, and they care about who you are as a person. And that's what's going to bring them in, right? So just think about that. And so those are the principles of emergent strategy. And as I said, this has had a major effect on the way that I do things in the last year. She published this book about a year ago. And what you pay attention to grows. So I could need this position and my how good I am at it and the influence that I have is all because I've paid attention to it. I prioritize it. I care deeply about it. And it has grown into something that I could never have imagined when I took on this position 4 years ago. I don't think Sean imagined that this is what I was going to do, and they hired this.
Kind of hope.
Yeah, but I really created something from scratch. The environmentalist hashtag existed when I started. It was mainly a few Canadians using it. It existed, but it wasn't the powerhouse that it is today. And today it is known across disciplines as one of the most powerful and brilliant online communities out there. And I have done that. Okay, so yeah. So a conclusion for this part, as I said, I have more slides and we can talk about all kinds of things and technicalities and whatnot. But my conclusion for this part of my talk is that look outside of the academy to activists and social justice models for public outreach. Prioritize inclusivity. Go forward with intention and fluidity. And think small rather than large. Take care of our space and our influence will develop naturally. Yeah, so that's just some of the things that go behind all this other technical stuff that I do every day. But I'm welcome to answer questions on all types of things. Social media, it is my jazz. So.
So at the Rachel Carson Center, I direct the Environment and Society portal, which is the Rachel Carson Center's digital publication platform and open access gateway to resources on the human-environment relationship. So the goal of our funding scheme, which is called the Kita Hamburger Kollege, is to internationalize humanities within German universities, German public research universities. And that means bringing international fellows from around the world to Munich, like John, who I met when he was there, spreading sunshine in 2012. So it means to bring the international fellows, but also to expand and internationalize the discourse that's happening in the humanities in German universities. So part of this mission, or part of the way that our center is aiming to speak to that mission, is through a digital documentation which is intended to serve both goals of reaching a broader audience for the center's publications, but also to really sort of expand awareness and public discourse about what is happening in different fields, different disciplines, in different places that are bringing together issues of ways that people are affected by the environment and affecting the environment and understanding the environment. Okay, so how can we better insert environmental humanities perspectives into public discourse? So it depends what we want to do, what we're trying to do. Are we looking to mediate scholarship for other scholars, for scholars in other disciplines? For non-specialists, do we want to educate, to invite and publish other people's perspectives? Do we want to inform decision makers, or to advocate, or to cultivate discourse? And digital technologies offer a lot of affordances for environmental communication, but our heterogeneous projects that are employing them, of course, reflect the choices and the intents of their creators. When I teach environmental communication, I use a book by Robert Cox and Phaedra Pizzulo called Environmental Communication in the Public Sphere. And Cox and Pizzulo really focus on advocacy in environmental communication. But there's two things that I really like about it, and one is that they're doing what Susie mentioned yesterday, is really taking apart, breaking down for people sort of the rhetoric of communication and the discourse of environmental communication. So explaining how are problems and responsibilities framed here, what values are being conveyed, what's emphasized or omitted. And while they are focused on advocacy, they also pose some difficult questions about scientific research generally, such as who should control its agenda and its applications, and how should the public possibly be trained to interpret uncertainty in research results. The second thing I really like about it is that they are foregrounding the public sphere. So the public sphere is a concept introduced by Jürgen Habermas in the structural transformation of the public sphere. And he's really talking about how in the 18th century, the public sort of opinion makers expanded beyond salons to really include a broader bourgeoisie. And what I think is really relevant to us today too is that he's thinking about the public as a broader group of rational critics and defenders of the common interest, who make authority legitimize itself, who hold authority to account. And I think this is very important today because, especially as an American, which I also am, I see a real lack of understanding and appreciation for what public good is. And I think that this cultivating a discourse, cultivating public discourse, and cultivating a public who are critical defenders of the common interest is extraordinarily important. And I think this is one of the mandates of the public university, not only to train employees that will advance the economy of the state, but also to teach and train a group of defenders of the common interest who understand what a public good is, and then also to contribute to the public discourse in a variety of ways. And I think that serving the public at a public university is an important responsibility and a privilege. One thing that Cox and Pizzullo do is they identify affordances. So they do focus a bit on digital communication, and in that they're presenting some affordances, some things that the digital tools can do for environmental communication. So for example, the ability to alert the public to a problem, including naming something as a problem, amplifying a message, so spreading information, mobilizing people, and engaging people in actions, so through digital tools like petitions and mobilizing people for protests. And so they also note a number of other affordances. The ability to hypermediate, so multiply media by use in other media, to remediate, which of course means to remedy, but can also mean to repurpose one form of media in another. To share by social networks, to self-represent, and to what they call gamify, to teach through simulations or play to make learning fun. And there are some things that I would add, some affordances that I would add to that list, things that I think that digital tools and technologies can do for environmental humanists to help them introduce concepts into the public discourse, or to help them both produce and distribute environmental knowledge, such as the importance of access to data and to content, and the importance of open access for challenging notions of expertise and who can create knowledge, but also demoting some gatekeepers from their roles as guards of what Michel Calon calls obligatory passage points, and introducing new forms of peer review, like alternative peer review models, preprints and online comments, crowd review, and alternative metrics. And I think we'll hear later today in some of the other talks more about that. It also means that the communication becomes multi-directional, and the public can share and contribute directly to research projects in the cases of citizen science, crowdsourcing, and crowdfunding. Open access movements and Creative Commons licensing, projects like Sean, e-publishing, and massive open online courses bypass traditional institutions of knowledge distribution. And of course, aggregation of data affords enormous data sets for humanities computing. Social media amplifies. And then what I think is the most important is discovery, creating multiple visible paths for users to access content. So simply putting content online, of course, does not mean that anyone is going to see it. So search, browsing tools, links, these all influence how content can be found. But before you can exploit these affordances, you have to understand your main goal and what these tools do, and also how your target audience uses these tools. I think yesterday we talked about how it's not possible to control the outcome of how your research is going to be applied and used once you put it out there. But I think you can never control that, and I don't think that that should discourage us from putting it out there and letting research inform the public discourse. Of course, you can put things out there, and they're not always going to break down barriers. Sometimes they'll be used to reinforce them. So I think the most important, there's I think 3 lessons that I can briefly mention. It's about knowing what your goal is, recognizing that discovery is key, and keeping your design and your user experience simple and straightforward. So this is what our project looks like today. This is the Environment and Society portal. Sean said he wanted an origin story. So close your eyes and imagine that it's 2009 I have just arrived in Germany, and I'm asked to do a number of things by our stakeholders. They wanted a one-stop shop for everything environmental humanities. They wanted free access to a canon of important environmental humanities works, places, and historical events, and they wanted maps and timelines representing these. And they wanted the ability to reach scholars internationally, as well as policymakers and the public. So they wanted something magical that would take care of addressing the public without having to define that public to really think about who that might be. But so of course doing all of these things was neither possible nor desirable. So really, I think what I really learned is you have to define your goals as narrowly as possible, and for us that meant transforming our goal from a one-stop shop to providing access and discovery. So you can think of, I can talk more about the reasons for that, but just to briefly, this has to do with copyright and the publishing industry and the fact that we can't compete with JSTOR and be providing free access to all of the latest top impact journal publications, and we can't. It's also not reasonable to think about creating a canon. And whose canon would this be? At this time in 2009 in Germany, there was also incredible anxiety about putting your scholarly work on the internet. I would attend these digital humanities symposia that were organized by the Bavarian State Library, which is a fantastic and really forward-thinking institution. Senior German historians would stand up in the Q&A and unleash these tirades of fear and anger about this. And I was told, this needs to be professional, this needs to look serious, don't make it pink, don't put links to porn sites. And I was like, let me write that down. But I think these concerns have really completely, over the last 8 years that I've been there, the landscape has completely transformed. And to be honest with you, what I think really led that transformation was the fact that the DFG, the German Research Society, the main funder in Germany for humanities research, began to prioritize digital humanities in its calls. And then people went from feeling threatened to saying, okay, this is something I need to do, how can I get on board? And it completely changed the atmosphere. Also, I had taken the part about Drupal out in order to save time, but I think in 2009, I wanted to do something really powerful, and I think choosing Drupal was the best choice at the time for a content management system. I'll just say, doing it today, I think you probably are better off maybe going with something like WordPress that's maybe a little bit easier to take care of yourself. So I'll just say that what the Environment and Society portal is it's still, our goals are way too broad, but what we narrowed it down to doing is two things. We want to have an open access gateway to resources on the human environment relationship, and we want these to be accessible. We want to also make the research of our fellows accessible. And so to do this, we have two different types of born digital publications. Our virtual exhibitions are larger, more complex projects that take multimedia and put it into interpretive contexts. These are pretty long. The ones that we have are article length, 8,000, 10,000 words. And Arcadia, which is a super short form born digital publication. And the other lesson that I wanted to mention is about keeping things simple. And I think from trying out a number of things, I think what works really well about Arcadia. Arcadia is a very super short form, yet peer-reviewed, born digital publication that asks scholars to condense their, not only condense, but provide a very focused story about their research in less than 1,000 words. And the story should be embedded in a very specific time and a specific place. So it's unusual, but I think what this does is it tells us that you can produce something that's really accessible and engaging, a story that's the length of a feature article. But it doesn't mean that you're dumbing it down. It means what you're doing is you're focusing on a micro aspect of it, and you can tell the story ideally in a way that illuminates your larger research project, which you can of course link to. And I think this is really successful for that reason, that it's found a way to raise the visibility of particularly early career scholars, but generally anyone's work, by presenting a really compact product that's not dumbed down, but that's engaging and attractive and includes a lot of media. And so our most viewed Arcadia articles have reached like 45,000 users. So really important is how they're being shared on social media. And the portal generally has reached 500,000 users since its launch in 2012 in every country in the world, according to Google Analytics. And so now we're getting around 20,000 per month. And the virtual exhibitions, I really like them, but they turned out to be an editorial nightmare. I mean, these may include like up to like maybe 200 individual media items that for which all the licenses need to be cleared. We really try to provide a lot of information about each item and make sure that that is visible and that we're handling the licensing properly. Anyway, these are two different kinds of virtual exhibitions we did. This is one about the Northwest Passage that includes an interactive timeline. That's a JS timeline plugin that we're using. And then this is one that we just published on radical environmentalism's print history. So it's the print history of the Earth First movement. And if you're interested in this, this is a treasure trove of provocative and shocking material that's been digitized at a really high quality. And it's all searchable, and it's there's just really some fascinating publications in there. And it's also raised some ethical questions for us, such as, for example, do I need to redact bomb-making instructions? You know, I'm sure that you can find these readily on the internet, but or do we need to have some kind of warning that this content could be, because a lot of this is used for educational purposes at universities, in high schools. I won't say anything more about that now, but these kinds of curation issues and issues and ethical issues arise. I mentioned that discovery is key. You need to create a lot of paths to your content, and this could be done by links, metadata like place names and controlled keyword vocabularies, and targeted hashtags. All the content on the portal is searchable and browsable through 3 different discovery tools. So every content item, every retro-digitized document, every Arcadia article that we have is all assigned place, time, and keyword metadata. And that metadata fuels our discovery tools. So this is in addition to the access, the discovery tools are the other quality that make the Environment and Society portal unique. So we have a map, a timeline, and a keyword explorer. And these are interactive tools that allow the user to discover something that is proximate to her interest, her geographical, her temporal, or thematic interest that she might not have known about before. This got a whole lot of backlash. So it was in 2011 that we went online beta. As you can see, this is how we went online beta in 2011. And I think the team thought, like, this is the most exciting thing. This is what really makes the Environment and Society portal unique, is that we have these interactive, playful fun tools that allow people to discover something unexpected. And so we foregrounded these at the top, right? So we've got our map, our timeline, our keyword explorer, and then we have this slider to kind of preview the content. People hated this. I cannot tell you the hatred that was unleashed about this, because people said, where's the table of contents? And they said, well, I want to know what the content is that is in here. Okay, fair enough. But they really felt uncomfortable with being confronted with these discovery tools at the top. And one of the comments that came back was, for my taste, too much emphasis is put on the unexpected. For me, that's not a quality, that's just vague. So what we did is we demoted the tools to the bottom of the page. And then I put like a table of contents up here that said, we've got these content categories, and everyone was much happier, and it was much more fun to go to work after that. Another mistake that I made, and this is about simplicity and usability, and I think this is just, I should have seen this coming, and you can look online at our map, our timeline, and keyword explorer, and explore them for yourselves. But this just shows the evolution of our timeline from 2012 to 2014 and 2016. And the timeline here, we had this scrollable timeline here, and then we wanted to really exploit the power of Drupal, because we were like, this can do so much. We want to deliver our users the power of this content management system. So we're like, okay, we've got this timeline. What we can do is we can sub-filter the timeline. You can search within the timeline for a theme that you're interested in. So if you want to type in flooding, and you can type in flood, and then type in, scroll along here to your time period. You can type in 3 different themes at the same time, and then they'll be color-coded, and then you can, show the I should have seen it coming, but you could show the break down sub-searches, sub-filtering of the timeline for different time periods. And people were like, we cannot use this. I think that historians are a major target audience for this project, and I think historians and people generally value the conceptual organization of a horizontal timeline or a vertical timeline, and this is just a news feed basically. So then we found the timeline from the Wellcome library and modified that a little bit. So this is what it looks like now, and it's a little bit buggy right now. We've been fine-tuning it, but I think this is much more straightforward and really nice, and works really well. And so if you click on, you can zoom in and out, and you can click on individual items and see them in their detailed item views. So finally, I just want to leave you with some impulses. So the Environment and Society portal, of course, it's not addressing a broad public. It's addressing an audience of scholars trying to overcome some national and disciplinary boundaries. It's heavily used for teaching and research, also by students. And I think, so things that I would like to do in a next project would be really impacting more directly a broader audience. I mean, I think this is important because it's making things accessible, and people who are based in places where they don't have this institutional access say that they really appreciate it and they use it heavily in their teaching and research. I think it is providing an important service. There's a lot of things that I'm really proud of the work that the team has done, but I think there's a lot that we couldn't do better. In terms of impulses, so how can we reach a broader audience? And geographer Richard Walker advises us to get out more. He says that if environmental history is to make a dent in the public discourse, it needs to get some edginess, by which he means some purchase on world affairs and a willingness to embrace environmental movements and speak to the public. And by getting out more and using sensors and tools that engage with us as we move, we can do much more to exploit digital affordances like these tools' potential to alert, engage, and create a fun and memorable learning experience. Considering digital tools like augmented reality tools that combine our own observations with those of sensors, they can let us modify our experience based on our location, the direction in which we're paying attention, our movements or our dwell time, how much time we're spending in front of a marker or a part of a museum exhibition. And I just wanted to leave you then with a few examples from the field, from the museum, and from a distance. So when we're in the field, we're observing a nature that is, of course, also the result of human action, but may or may not have been curated to follow a particular species or a trail. So field guides can help us identify flora and fauna, survival tips, or drawing attention to historical or natural features. So an enriched digital guide like iNaturalist lets you take photos and compare. And in the case here, where I made a faulty identification, I also am availing myself to critique and correction from the community, from the crowd. And when you're on the trail, augmented reality can rely on GPS sensing through your mobile device. And enriched trail guides can then offer alternative views or show floating points of interest, or even three-dimensional reconstructions of, for example, ruins or heritage sites. In a museum where objects can be carefully curated in a highly controlled environment, away from the weather, it's even easier to employ sensors. We have a new museum that we're building in Munich, which is going to be called Biotopia. And it's a museum of the life sciences. And we brought in Michael John Gorman, who's director of Dublin's Science Gallery. And I brought my class to talk with him about his plans for the museum. And he was saying that he views virtual reality as a great example or a great opportunity to, for example, build empathy with non-human species. Okay, so this is a guy wearing lederhosen who's strapped into a virtual reality device. But there's also a flyover country app that allows you to experience from a distance environmental information using linked open data. So when you're in your air, you can download this in advance, and then when you're in the plane, you can call up, for example, dinosaur remains and see what's below you on the ground. And then finally, I wanted to mention the whatwasthere.com that lets users superimpose historic photos onto Google Street View. And there's no data that I could find from Labrador or from St. John's from Newfoundland, but I did find several from Nova Scotia, and you can superimpose like a historic photo onto Google Street Maps, and then you can fade it in and out so it almost looks like the historic photos are like ghosts, faded ghosts in the current view from Google Street Maps. So so in conclusion, I just wanted to say that these technologies are becoming part of the nature that we observe and understand, in addition to shaping how we produce and distribute new knowledge. And done well, these technologies can help us to alert, engage, and inspire the public. Thanks.
For more information on Jessica Dewitt and Kimberly Coulter's work, check out the links on our show notes. To find out about future episodes of Crosscurrents, you can follow us on Twitter @Nexus Center, search up the Nexus Center Facebook page, or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or YouTube. The music used in the podcast was licensed under a Creative Commons license, and you can find out more about the music through the links on our show notes. The Nexus Center is generously supported by the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences and the Vice President's Research Office at Memorial University. The Environmental Humanities in the Public Realm workshop was generously supported by a grant from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council and at Memorial by the Faculty of HSS and the VPR Research Office. We'll see you again.